Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Neo-Colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, by Kwame Nkrumah, Part 10. 9. Anglo-American Corporation Limited. The biggest octopus in the Oppenheimer Sea of operations is probably the Anglo-American Corporation Limited. Its investments are on a threefold scale, and the list of the main ones convey but the barest idea of their very considerable range. These are more or less direct participations, and do not include the more intricate holdings held through or in common with subsidiaries and others in a more far-reaching extension of interests. Principally in mining, they nevertheless branch out into processing, transport, and communications, land holdings and estate, forestry and timber, industry, as well as into hydroelectrical power schemes like that of the Rhodesia-Congo Border Power Corporation. Gold, uranium, iron, asbestos, and coal mines are among the corporation's most notable undertakings in South Africa, forming the solid foundation on which the Oppenheimer empire stands. Copper mining is its principal occupation in the Rhodesias, though it exploits also lead, zinc, and cadmium, and has the distinction of being the only producer of coal in Rhodesia, where it controls the Wangi Colliery. Through associated companies, its interests spread out into Tanganyika, Uganda, the Congo, Angola, Mozambique, West Africa, and even into the Sahara and North Africa, as can be seen by a list of its direct investments. It is interesting to note among the companies, too, that are engaged in the enlistment of native labor, namely Anglo-Colliery's recruiting organization, Property Limited, and Hanson's Native Labor Organization, Property Limited. Recruiting labor for the South African mines has always been an absorbing problem, in connection with which there long ago grew up an efficient organization for importing workers not only from the reserves of South Africa itself, but also from the protectorates, the Rhodesias and Nyasaland. There are long-standing arrangements with the authorities of the Portuguese colonies, particularly Mozambique, for the recruitment of African labor for work in the mines of South Africa. Enforcement of apartheid through the establishment of Bantustans, such as that recently gone through in the Transkei, will force the chiefs, under inducement, to supply increasing numbers of local men for the mines. There is now a plan to stop the employment of workers from Zambia, Rhodesia, and Malawi, and even from the protectorates. It may well be thought that these people will be infected with the disease of nationalism, and hence add fuel to the fire of unrest that has been lit in South Africa itself. It is significant that Mozambique Africans are still to be allowed the privilege of enriching South Africa's mine owners by their toil, not least among them Anglo-American Corporation. This company was incorporated in 1917 to draw together a number of mining, investment, and industrial companies already controlled by Mr. Harry Oppenheimer, and to bring them into tighter organization with other such interests as Mr. C. W. Engelhard, chairman of Rand Mines, Kennecott Copper Corporation, and other associates. As the guardian of these interests, Anglo-American acts as technical manager and secretary to an extensive number of mining and investment companies falling within its wide perimeter. In its executive, administrative, and secretarial capacities, it also arranges the financial life of the many enterprises coming under its care. The list given indicates only the barest bones of Anglo-American's multifarious interests, and if we were to examine them in detail, we should find ourselves reaching into a most tangled complex of arteries and sinews. Many of the undertakings are not only important in themselves, but have involvements which weave together the mining, industrial, and financial world of Africa with that of the rest of the world. Such organizations as the Rand Selection Corporation, Union Corporation, Rokana Corporation Limited, and certain others participate in a self-perpetuating and exclusive ensemble. Interaction and interpenetration of interests is a predominant feature emphasizing the monopolistic nature of the African mining industry, whose leaders are the powerful arbiters of the continent's industrial growth, especially south of the Sahara. It is not difficult to understand how, from this position, they and their European and American associates and financial backers wield a preponderant influence upon the policies of their governments in relation to the African scene. A look, for instance, at Rand Selection Corporation Limited brings us at once upon one of the principal arms of Anglo-American Corporation in the working of its vast empire. Rand immediately brings to mind the vision of fevered diamond and gold rushes that followed in the wake of the young Cecil Rhodes and his brother adventurers in the late 1870s. Rhodes' quarrel with the Boers was over the fight to penetrate the interior to get at the gold of the Witwatersrand. His political leadership was assumed to make himself king of the mining wealth that had been discovered. It was, according to a committee set up in the Cape to examine Rhodes's part in the famous Jameson raid, quote, in his capacity as controller of the three great joint stock companies, the British South Africa Company, the De Beers Consolidated Mines, and the Goldfields of South Africa, he directed and controlled the combination which rendered such a proceeding as the Jameson raid possible, end quote. The Jameson raid finished Rhodes politically in South Africa. It was then he turned to what is now Rhodesia, where he made the British South Africa Company the power in the land that it has been ever since. Nor has the control of political affairs by all the great mining combines abated in any way since then. Rather has it intensified until they are the powers which control and direct affairs, not in Africa alone, but by their integration with other formidable combinations in Europe and America. They exercise great influence in these continents also, and hence internationally. De Beers and Goldfields remain. The intervening years have, naturally, seen an extension of the opening up of mines and their exploitation, accompanied by a constant adaptation of their financial arrangements. Goldfields heads a vast organization of its own. De Beers has come within the periphery of Rand Selection Corporation, but still controls within its own group of companies the output and distribution of most of the world's diamonds. In its own right, Rand Selection owns about 14,890 acres of freehold property in some of the richest mining areas of South Africa. A number of townships have been laid out by the company, in which it has leasehold rights of a high value. Certain of its rights are secured by a 92% interest in South African Townships, Mining and Finance Corporation Limited, and its wholly owned subsidiaries, African Gold and Base Metals Holdings Limited, Cecilia Park Property Limited, and Dewhurst Farms Limited. Rand Selection is, however, a subsidiary of Anglo-American, under whose direction its scope was enlarged at the close of 1960 to enable it to participate in any new business undertaken by Anglo-American up to 1 October 1970 on an increased percentage basis. The enlargement of Rand Selection was accompanied by the contributing of shares, loans, and cash to De Beers Investment Trust by Anglo-American, subsidiaries of British South Africa Co., Central Mining and Investment Corporation Limited, De Beers Consolidated Mines Limited, and Johannesburg Consolidated Investment Co. Limited, who have been joined by the American-controlled South African company Engelhard Hanovia Incorporated, and International Nickel Co. of Canada Limited, controlled by the American Rockefeller Morgan Groups. Rand Selection then acquired all the issued capital of De Beers Investment Trust in return for the issues of shares of its own to the investment trust shareholders. Under the arrangement, De Beers Investment has become a wholly owned subsidiary of Rand Selection. Yet, at the same time, by the acquisition of its holdings in Rand Selection, De Beers is now the majority holder of Rand's 33,085,365 shares, of the 35 million authorized to comprise its capital of £8,270,000. It is perfectly obvious that the loans and cash advanced to De Beers by the above-listed companies were in order to enable it to facilitate its own and Rand's enlargement. As a result of the 1962 implementation of the agreed arrangement, De Beers Investment is now known as Rancell Investments Limited. Its three wholly owned subsidiaries, Rand American Investments Property Limited, Rhodes Investment Limited, and Jameson Mining Holdings Property Limited, are now consolidated within the Rand Selection organization. The two holding companies, Rand Selection and Rancel, shared also in 1962 in the enlargement of another Anglo-American creation, Consolidated Mines Selection Co. Limited, registered in the United Kingdom in 1897, whose interests cover the major mining activities of southern Africa. The assets of Consolidated Mines were jerked up to £15 million by the acquisition from companies within the Anglo-American sphere of holdings worth over £10,500,000 in the British South Africa Co., Central Mining and Investment Corporation Limited, Johannesburg Consolidated Investment Corporation Limited, and Selection Trust Limited, as well as by smaller holdings in Bay Hall Trust Limited and Rhodesian Anglo-American Limited. In return for ceding their shares, the participating companies have acquired shares in Consolidated Mines Selection Co. Limited. At the same time, Rand Selection took up, in association with Anglo-American, Consolidated Mines Selection, and affiliated companies, an option on the purchase of 400,000 shares in Hudson Bay Mining and Smelting Co. Limited, one of three leading copper-gold mining companies of Canada, controlled by United States finance. Exercise of this option was made possible by loans raised in America, probably from the same interests behind Hudson Bay Mining. Rand Selection's operations also coincide with those of Anglo-American and the very important Swaziland Iron Ore Development Co. Limited, which has concluded contracts with two major Japanese steel producers, Yawata Iron and Steel Co. Limited and Fuji Iron and Steel Co. Limited, as well as with General Ore International Corporation for the sale to them of 12 million tons of iron ore over a period of approximately 10 years. Anglo-American has enabled Rand Selection to participate in the purchase from British Coated Board and Paper Mills Limited, a United Kingdom firm, of a large holding in South African Board Mills Limited. This, stated Mr. H.F. Oppenheimer in his report to the 71st Annual General Meeting of Rand Selection Corporation Limited in Johannesburg on 26 February 1963, quote, is one of the leading growth companies in South Africa, and is managed by Stafford Mayer & Co., with whom the Anglo-American Corporation has long been associated in the coal industry, end quote. Contractual arrangements with Anglo-American have secured Rand Selection participation in a number of property developments in central Johannesburg. The two have also gone hand in hand in Anglo-American's widespread prospecting activities and in certain development projects. Among them are explorations into the feasibility of the Bushveld Igneous Complex of South Africa. Here, indeed, an Anglo-American is the most ramified industrial and financial structure in Africa, powerful and commanding, the organization that governs the fate of many millions on this continent and stretches out its influence overseas. Like all monopolies, Anglo-American is never content with the existing boundaries of its empire, but is ever seeking extensions, partly because it cannot afford to be overtaken. Hence, it is continually conducting a comprehensive prospecting program in many parts of Africa and elsewhere, in order to find untapped sources of mineral wealth that can be profitably exploited. 10. The diamond groups. The diamond industry of South Africa brought in a revenue of £93 million in 1962. Two-thirds of this was from gem diamonds, whose carat price was recently raised by the industry's controllers. Of such importance is the diamond industry to South Africa that there is no duty on the export of rough diamonds. Diamonds are a major concern of Mr. Harry Oppenheimer, and it is through De Beers and the Diamond Corporation, with their associated companies and alliances, that the operations of his Anglo-American corporation stretch out from South Africa into Southwest Africa, Angola, Congo, East and West Africa, to control, until recently, the production and sale of pretty well 85% of the world's diamonds. Even the distribution of the Soviet Union's quite important production has been added by the arrangement to dispose of red diamonds through De Beers' selling organization. The De Beers group of companies, as we have seen, is controlled by Rand Selection Corporation Limited. Tightly interwoven, it interlocks with the gem companies of Angola and Mozambique, and the dominating complex that spreads across the Rhodesias and Congo. Rand Selection now dominates the administration of the group by reason of its recent acquisition of the total holdings of De Beers Investment Trust Limited, now known as Ransel Investments Limited. Chief operating company is De Beers Consolidated Mines Limited, and still on its board is a member of the family of Solly Joel, the East End Londoner with whom Rhodes adventured into diamonds along with Alfred Beat. Consolidation of the De Beers, Kimberley, and Griqualand West mines of Southwest Africa was the original purpose of the company. A considerable number of allied and even different interests have since been added. Besides the mines in South Africa, De Beers operates open cast workings along the southern coast and in Namaqualand, Southwest Africa. A 50% interest is held in the Williamson mine in Tanganyika. The other holder is the Tanganyika government. Among its subsidiary companies, De Beers Consolidated includes Premier Transvaal Diamond Mining Co. Limited, Consolidated Mines of Southwest Africa Limited, Diamond Corporation Limited, and De Beers Industrial Corporation Limited. Directly and indirectly, it holds something like 40% of the capital of Diamond Purchasing and Trading Co. Limited and Diamond Trading Co. Limited, and 31 to 35% of Industrial Distributors 1946 Limited. All these purchasing and distributing companies are main avenues through which the gem and industrial diamond production of the world's principal producers are distributed. De Beers Industrial has also interests in diamond production by its control of Griqualand West Diamond Mining Co., Du Toitspan Mine Limited, New Jagersfontein Mining and Exploration Co. Limited, and Consolidated Co. Bultfontein Main Limited. What seems at first glance to be a rather curious interest for a company engaged in the diamond industry is De Beers Consolidated's 50% holding of the issued share capital of African Explosives and Chemical Industries Limited. On closer examination, it will not appear so odd. The company thought it expedient and profitable to have its own avenue for purchasing explosives used in opening up working areas on its own mines and those of associated companies. That was the original aim, but once in the explosives business, it was a short road to their manufacture and expansion into serious production of chemicals, especially those allied to explosives manufacture. The present-day operations of African Explosives is by no means so limited, nor is there anything innocent about them or the company's composition. Through De Beers Industrial Corporation, it is jointly owned by De Beers Principal, Anglo-American Corporation, and the South African branch of Imperial Chemical Industries Limited. ICI's ramifications and its control of a number of chemicals, synthetics, and manufacturing processes make it one of the most powerful monopolies in the world. It long ago reached the stage of cartelization with other foremost chemicals and armaments organizations. Its cartel arrangements with the major chemical and plastics material companies in the world, the I.E. Dupont de Nemours Corporation, link it with the modern military equipment industry that seems to issue inevitably for chemicals manufacture. Explosives laid the foundation of the DuPont rise to power. Quote, their first big order was to supply Napoleon in his vain attempt to crush Toussaint Louverture and the people of Santo Domingo, and the next was for the War of the United States against the so-called Barbary Pirates, end quote. The following quotation is from Cartels in Action, quoted by Victor Perlot in The Empire of High Finance, page 195. Quote, this established the role of DuPont, which has continued down to the present day, when it dominates the greatest and most profitable single corporation in the world, General Motors. DuPont's association with ICI goes back about 40 years. It was in 1921 that half of the General Motors shares sold by the House of Morgan were bought by Explosives Trade Limited, a British subsidiary of the Nobel Industries, with which ICI was connected. Explosives were among ICI's earliest operations, and its interests and Nobel's concerns in this and other fields were subsequently absorbed into the heart of the ICI empire. Ever since that early coming together, the alliance between DuPont and ICI has grown more complex. Both of them had effective patent and processing rights with the great German chemical combine IG Farben, and they divided the world between them. Both DuPont and ICI continued to respect their arrangements with IG Farben during the war. DuPont and ICI have abandoned all pretense of business rivalry in numerous major foreign markets, including Canada, Argentina, and Brazil. There, they do business as a single, unified concern through jointly owned local companies. They have succeeded in cartelizing these tributary chemical markets, thanks to their combined power and prestige." End quote. If we see ICI in association with Oppenheimer companies in South Africa, this should not astonish us. Monopolies are constantly drawing together, aligned by common industrial and financial interests in a given field and at a given time. The ICI-Oppenheimer combination is not restricted to African explosives, but repeats itself in association with other Oppenheimer offshoots and groups. British blessing is given to the enterprise through the secondment on contract to the company of an expert from the British nuclear arms establishment. Moreover, the military equipment produced at its factories is based on the specifications of the British Army, Navy, and Air Forces. Important though African explosives is to the Oppenheimer Combine and South Africa's military designs in Africa, it owes its existence to the diamond mining in which it was originally conceived. It is only one of the De Beers consolidated progeny. There are several others, among them the investment company De Beers Holding Limited, of which it controls 84 to 85%. On the death of J.T. Williamson, De Beers Holding contrived to secure an option on the whole of 1,200 shares, constituting the capital of his mine in Tanganyika. A deal was fixed at £4,139,996, with De Beers responsible for estate duty and interest on Williamson shares. Satisfaction of these items was made by cession of 320 shares of Williamson Diamonds Limited to the Tanganyika government, which subsequently bought up a further 280. The price of £1,317,272 agreed upon for those was met, together with 6% total interest, out of dividends received by the government on its total holding of 600 shares. Consolidated Diamond Mines of Southwest Africa Limited, in which De Beers Consolidated has a majority holding, has a concession covering large areas of alluvial diamond deposits in Southwest Africa, valid until the close of the year 2010. This was extended by the Southwest Administration from a previous expiry date of 1972. A most valuable item in the De Beers inventory of profits is the De Pass, royalty owned by the Southwest Financial Corporation Limited, a full subsidiary of Consolidated Diamond Mines. This royalty gives its owner 8% of the gross proceeds from the sale of diamonds produced in the Pomona area of Southwest Africa, in which Southwest Finance possesses landed property and other mineral rights and royalties. Participation in the diamond distributive trade comes to Consolidated Diamond Mines through the following holdings: Diamond Corporation Limited, 5,996,903. Diamond Trading Co. Limited, 80,000. Diamond Purchasing and Trading Co. Limited, 200,000. Industrial Distributors 1946 Limited, 150,000. De Beers Holdings Limited, 1,150,000. Its own production of diamonds has gone up from 895,744 carats in 1958 to 933,937 in 1960. Taken together with its earnings by way of royalties and investments in the diamond trade, it is a small wonder that it has over the past 15 years been able to declare the following impressive dividends. 1946 to 1949, 40% plus 10% bonus each year. 1950, 40% plus 20%. 1951, 125%. 1952 to 1958, 150% each year. 1959, 200%, 1960, 200%. The company's fully paid up and authorized capital stands at £5,240,000. Its net consolidated profit in 1960 was £10,734,468, after providing £4,622,731 for taxation. Dividends absorbed £5,667,437, the majority beneficiary being De Beers Consolidated. The estimated profit for 1961 was £12,848,000, after providing £5,410,000 for taxation and £168,000 for dividends on preference shares. The figure for ordinary dividend payments is not included, but it is likely to be higher than for the previous year. Diamond Mining and Utility Co. SWA Limited is associated with De Beers Consolidated by reason of a cession to the latter company of a large portion of a diamond area in southwest Africa, in exchange for a 20% interest in the net profit on diamonds recovered. The company has 180,000 shares in Diamond Dredging and Mining Co. SWA Limited. To satisfy this purchase, Diamond Mining and Utility issued at par another 940,000 shares in July 1960, the authorized capital then being increased from £300,000 to £500,000. Its other interests are 114,400 shares in Industrial Diamonds of South Africa 1945 Limited, which ceased operations in the spring of 1960, but retains 148,200 shares in Diamond Mining and Utility, as well as 197,900 shares in Lorelei Copper Mines Limited, in which Diamond Mining and Utility also holds 200,000 shares. All in all, this demonstrates what might be described as a tight but cozy combination. The most interesting hub of the whirling diamond wheel is the Diamond Corporation, whose £22 million capital is owned mainly by De Beers Consolidated Mines, Diamond Mines of Southwest Africa, and the ever-present Anglo-American Corporation. The Diamond Corporation purchases, on periodical contract, the diamond production of the world's most important producers, usually on a specific quota basis. These diamonds are then marketed through the Central Selling Organization, together with the output of the De Beers Group mines and those from the diggings owned and run by the South African government, which is in the mining business on state account. Where do the other diamond trading companies come in? Diamond Trading Company Limited receives and sells to the market diamonds of gem or near gem value. Industrial Distributors Sales Limited have a corner on drilling material and bort for the mines, which they sell to the market. Close associates of De Beers also have interests in these tributary companies of the group. Société Minière de Pesseca S.A., a company within the dragnet of the Société Générale de Belgique, has holdings in Industrial Distributors 1946 Limited, Diamond Trading Co. Limited, Diamond Purchasing and Trading Co. Limited, Diamond Development Co. Limited, and in another of the Société Générale's wards of the diamond world, Société Diamant Boart. Industrial Distributors, also within Société Générale's direct investment portfolio, increased its 1961 dividend by about 20% over those of previous years. BCK's association with the Congo is continued through the Société d'élevage et de culture au Congo (SEC) and Sea Maritime Belge (CMB). Operating deposits on the Lubelache River in the Congo, which produce mainly industrial diamonds and crushing bort, BCK has a subsidiary, Société BCK Manganese, working manganese deposits near a Congolese railway junction. At the beginning of 1962, BCK Manganese established a 500 million franc subsidiary, Société Minière de Kisenga, in which it is the chief shareholder. Kisenga has received certain concessionary and exploitation rights from BCK Manganese, which also participated in October 1962 in the creation of the Société Européenne de Dérive du Manganèse, SEDEMA. The main parties to the formation of SEDEMA are associates of the Société d'Entreprise et d'Investissement du BCK, CBK, and the Manganese Chemicals Corporation of USA. From the report of the Société Générale for 1962, a directing hand behind all the segmentation, it emerges that an extraordinary meeting of BCK on 21 March 1962 agreed that BCK should renounce in favor of a new company, Société Minière de Bakwanga, all its mining rights in the Congo, mainly in the Bakwanga region, and should become the Société d'Entreprise et d'Investissement du BCK, to be known by its abbreviated form CBK. The purpose of CBK was reformed to cover the investigation, promoting, and financing, by whatever means, in Belgium as well as in the Congo, and other foreign countries of all kinds of enterprises, whether in mining, industry, commerce, agriculture, or transport, especially those having connections with mineral substances of all kinds, as well as with their derivatives and substitutes. Within the framework of this new objective, the former participations were increased and new participations were taken up, or were in course of examination, in particular certain ones having to do with the production of artificial diamonds. The principal activity of CBK, however, is to be its own important participation in the Société Minière de Bakwanga, known as MIBA. MIBA's production in 1961, its first year of working, was nearly 15 million carats of diamonds, which the chairman of Société Générale considered should be its normal rhythm, having regard to the selling market. CBK has been busy in South Kasai, where other investments have been placed, including the modernization of a 150-kilometer road from Bakwanga to the station at Mweneditu. Société Générale's participation in CBK stands at 525,000 shares of no par value, and has assisted BCK Manganese to place 10 million francs out of the 11 million francs it has been allotted in the 81 million franc capital of CDMA. CBK has taken up another 10 million francs. The object of CDMA is the manufacture of manganese composites and manganese metals for the European market. It is not long before any endeavor to trace the companies engaged in a particular field of mining leads into associations connecting with other sectors of raw materials production. Thus, our examination of the De Beers diamond enterprises has taken us into the ever vaster world of Société Générale's interest, which we shall meet again more than once in the course of our journeyings through the tangled maze of international control of Africa's basic riches. It is also significant that in almost every corner we find lurking some coupling with American major industrial concerns. In the present case, Manganese Chemicals Corporation comes immediately and directly into the picture. Looking further into African diamond production, we find another Société Générale offshoot operating in the Congo. Société Internationale Forestière et Minière du Congo, known briefly as Forminière, concerns itself with mining, commercial, industrial, and agricultural pursuits, chiefly in Kasai. Its main preoccupation is diamond mining. Forminière is one of King Leopold's original main concessions in the Congo. He formed the company in 1906 with the help of, among others, two American businessmen, Thomas F. Fortune and Daniel Guggenheim, the last of whom built up a fortune from mining in South America. Today, Forminière is part of the vast complex dominated by Société Générale, Tanganyika Concessions, and its child, Union Minière du Haut-Katanga, which has the Congo's economic life in the palm of its hand, and is now greedily extended to Angola and Mozambique. Through its subsidiary, Société Internationale Commerciale et Financière de la Fourminière, Interfor, it has sister interests with BCK in a number of agricultural companies working plantations in the Congo on a grand scale. Other holdings held by Forminière are in mining companies such as Société de Recherche et d'Exploitation des Bauxites du Congo, Bauxite Congo, featured also in Union Minière's lengthy list of more important interests. Oil is also included in the Société Générale's empire through Société de Recherche et d'Exploitation des Pétroles, Socorep. This is among Forminière's investments. The Diamond Corporation acts as the rallying center for the merchandise offered for sale by all the large producers. In its role as the central buying organization for the international producers of diamonds, it is not surprising that it should have a share in some of the most important producing companies outside the South African group. Messrs. H.F. Oppenheimer and H.J. Joel, of its own directorate, are seated on the board of the Angola Diamond Co., Companhia de Diamantes de Angola, another two members of which, Messrs. Albert E. Thiel and A.A. Ryan, adorn the Fortminiere board. Mr. Thiel has important connections with certain powerful American groups. He began his career in 1909 with the Guggenheim brothers, one of whom was so helpful to Leopold II. Thence, he graduated to the chairmanship of the Pacific Tin Consolidated Corporation and to directorates in the Kennecott Copper Corporation and its subsidiary, Braden Copper Co. Oil and nitrates are also Mr. Thiel's business. Maracaibo Oil and Barber Oil are numbered among his directorships, as are Chilean Nitrates Sales Corporation and the chairmanship of the Feldspar Corporation. As a director of Angola Diamond and Fortminiere, he has most certainly, not innocently, strayed from his basic moorings, anchored in Guggenheim, Kennecott Copper, oil, tin, and nitrates, in which the Morgans have their helping hand. The Morgan Guarantee Trust is one of the main arteries from which flows finance for the Oppenheimer combines. Morgan is also in association with the Banque Belge, the leading banking string in the Société Générale structure, and the biggest bank in Belgium. Represented on the Angola Diamond Board is another Angola concern, Companhia de Pesquisas Mineras de Angola. Angola Diamonds has monopoly rights permitting it to work for diamonds over almost 390,000 square miles of Angola, an area almost 4 times the size of Ghana or Great Britain. 43 mines are in operation, 3 new ones having been opened to replace 3 whose reserves were running out. Prospecting is going on for further deposits, 19 groups being at work. Direct interest in the company, registered in Portugal, is held by the Angola government, the on-the-spot administrative arm of the Portuguese government. It holds 200,000 shares, slightly in excess of the 198,800 held by the Société Générale. About half the African workers for the company are forced laborers, rounded up by the authorities and receiving a monthly wage of around 70 escudos, equivalent to about 16 shillings. The very handsome profits of the company are divided equally between the province of Angola and the shareholders after 6% has been allocated to the managing bodies. Shareholders' profits at the end of trading, 1960, was 137,931 escudos, after the same amount had been reserved for the Angola province and 15,341,649 escudos for legal reserve. Total profits, in fact, amounted to 289,343,511 escudos, of which 114,800,000 escudos had come from profits held in reserve. Interim and final dividends absorbed a sum for the year of 1960 of 136,670,000 escudos. The company pays no import duties on plant or material and no duties on diamonds exported. It also enjoys a loan from the Angola government of 100 million escudos, in return for the free issue of 100,000 shares of 170 escudos, each to the province of Angola in 1955. The unheard of uneconomic rate of interest on this loan is 1%, repayments to be completed in 1971. Angola Diamond Co. holds 16 to 26% of the issued capital of the Sociedade Portuguesa de Lapidação de Diamantes. Diamond Corporation has contractual arrangements for the purchase of Angola Diamond's output, which has recently been running at over 1 million carats and is estimated to give even higher yields, since mechanical excavators and washing plants have been installed, following the proof of extensive alluvial deposits. Gem diamonds represent 65% of the output. Diamond Corporation has broken into the Ivory Coast, with the formation of a local subsidiary to purchase diamonds on the open market of that country. How open the market will be is anybody's guess. Some of the other newly independent African countries are striving to break away from Diamond Corporation domination. Ghana has set up its own diamond market in Accra, and all sellers, including Consolidated African Selection Trust Limited, CAST, working a 68 square mile concession in the Akima-Bwakwa district, must sell through it. Sierra Leone Selection Trust Limited is CAST's subsidiary operating in Sierra Leone. Incredible as it may sound, Sierra Leone Selection once held exclusive diamond mining rights over practically the whole of the country. In 1955, following protestations from the people, especially in the rich diamond region of Connaught, the extent of its concession area was reduced to some 209 square miles, then the extent of the company's existing working. The curtailment of rights, however, was more apparent than real. The concessionary rights are for 30 years, but restricted rights were granted over a further 250 square miles, of which 100 have since been taken up. The company is also allowed to prospect for deep deposits of diamonds anywhere in Sierra Leone, for a period of not less than 10 years, and to mine them. That the agreement was a sham is proved by the undertaking given by the then colonial government not to grant before 1975 to any applicants other than Sierra Leoneans or companies in which the beneficial interest or greater part of it is held by Sierra Leoneans any diamond prospecting licenses or leases without first offering such licenses or leases to Sierra Leone Selection Trust. Though this virtually gives a free hand to the company, the government nevertheless made it a payment of £1,500,000 to compensate for supposedly lost opportunities. All the 6 million shares issued out of the 6,400,000 authorized to make up the capital of £1,600,000 are held by caste. What profits the company makes are not publicly known, since accounts are issued only to shareholders. The chairman of both caste and Sierra Leone Selection is Mr. A. Chester Beatty, who has as colleagues on both boards Messrs. E. C. Wharton Tiger, T. H. Bradford, and P. J. Oppenheimer. Mr. P. J. Oppenheimer also sits on the board of the Diamond Corporation, alongside Mr. W. A. Chappell, who is another colleague of the caste board. Both these gentlemen sit together on the London Committee of De Beers Consolidated Mines, Mr. P. J. Oppenheimer also occupying a seat on the Johannesburg Committee, on which he is associated with Major General I. P. de Villiers, C.B., and Mr. A. Wilson, the last named two being also joined together on the Directorate of Consolidated Diamond Mines of Southwest Africa Limited. Mr. Thomas Horrott Bradford represents Selection Trust Limited, of which he is Managing Director, on its main associated with companies in America, the Rhodesias, Canada, and Venezuela. Mr. Beatty keeps company with Mr. Bradford on several of these boards. Mr. Chappell's connection with the diamond world is on a decidedly high level, if we may judge from his directorship of the Banque Diamantaire Anversoise SA Antwerp, which is still the world's major diamond cutting center, employing over 13,000 people in this industry. The Antwerp Diamond Bank occupies an important strategic position. Something like 40,000 to 50,000 carats are cut in Antwerp every week, the bulk of the rough stones coming from the Diamond Trading Company at the London end of De Beers Central Selling Organization. But Antwerp searches other sources for its diamond supplies, and in 1961 got as much as 30% of its total weight in carats elsewhere. It is only too obvious that Mr. A. Chester Beatty moves among the exalted ranks of the diamond world, especially that preponderant sector of it dominated by the De Beers Group and pivoted around the Diamond Corporation and its selling organization. It is therefore difficult to understand the play that Mr. Beatty made in connection with the Sierra Leone government bill, passed towards the end of 1961, obliging all producers of diamonds in Sierra Leone to sell through the government diamond office. Mr. Beatty, as chairman of Selection Trust Limited, as well as of Caste and Sierra Leone Selection, its subsidiary, asserted that the expired contract that Caste had with the Diamonds Corporation had not been renewed because of the excessive commission of 12% demanded by it. Caste had offered 4%, which had been rejected. A contract was therefore made with Harry Winston Incorporated of New York, owners and cutters of the famed Jonker diamond, who were said to be looking for a direct source of supply which would sidestep the Diamond Corporation. In view of the interconnection between Selection Trust and the De Beers companies, including the Diamond Corporation, through interdependent shareholdings as well as directorial interweaving, it is strange to witness one of the most prominent links in the chain, Mr. A. Chester Beatty, protesting his anxiety to protect Sierra Leone's interests against the corporation, of which he is very much a part. The protest from Mr. Beatty was that if Sierra Leone Selection were obliged to submit its production to the government's Diamond Office, this would ultimately go to the Diamond Corporation, which was the Diamond Office's end purchaser, precisely what he was fighting against. Moreover, this would mean severing the contract with Winston, for which breach compensation would have to be made. Mr. Beattie pointed out that his solicitude for Sierra Leone's welfare had caused him to secure a re-evaluation of the Diamond Corporation contract in 1957, so that an additional £2,700,000 had been received in its last 3 years of operation. There's a curious twist here, for Mr. Beattie asserts that £500,000 more in revenue would be received by the Sierra Leone government under the Winston contract than under the one concluded with Diamond Corporation. 4 pertinent questions arise from this. What increased percentage of revenue was represented by the additional £2,700,000 Mr. Beattie said was obtained from the Diamond Corporation on the last 3 years of the expired contract? How much of this came into the hands of the Sierra Leone government, and what increased percentage of revenue did it represent for the government? How is it that Mr. Beattie could not obtain similarly advantageous terms from a new contract with Diamond Corporation? Is the 8% better price from Winston accurately reflected in the estimate of some £500,000 additional revenue for the government that would accrue from a contract with Winston? But is not all this just a facade aimed at maintaining the fiction that Selection Trust and Diamond Corporation are unrelated entities, a fiction retailed even by a press one would assume knows better? For we have the Freetown correspondent of West Africa declaring in that journal's issue of 27 January 1962 that, quote, the 2 European giants in the diamond industry, Diamond Corporation and Selection Trust, were clearly at loggerheads, end quote. The heart of the matter really lies in Mr. Beattie's complaint that the Sierra Leone government's regulation interferes with his company's freedom, expressly laid down by the former colonial government in their concession agreement, to sell as they think fit. Mr. Beattie, like the monopolistic interests he represents so efficiently on many boards, does not wish to recognize the winds of change that have come with African independence, giving the new nations the opportunity to order their economies in the way they consider more beneficial for their own good. Intrusion into the diamond field has been made lately by a Texan who has more usually appeared wherever oil was bubbling. Mr. Sam Collins has put his hands to gathering diamonds from the seabed of the Chamace Reef on the southwest African coast, reported to contain a minimum reserve of 14 million carats. Mr. Collins scouted round for additional capital for his Sea Diamonds Company, holding the operating company Marine Diamonds. It was reported that Mr. Oppenheimer, after watching his activities with some concern, decided to collaborate with Mr. Collins. It would appear that General Mining and Finance Corporation and Anglo-Transvaal Consolidated, which we have already met as part of the Anglo-American complex, had engaged themselves in the venture. They were to make available additional funds up to £500,000 to equalize with a like amount to be put up by Mr. Collins and the companies controlled by him. General Mining has an exchange of shares with Anglo-American, and De Beers Consolidated Mines is among its portfolio of investments, and is also National Finance Corporation of South Africa, which is so helpful to a number of Oppenheimer companies in the matter of loans. De Beers apparently had an option on 25% of Sea Diamond's equity and a first refusal on Mr. Collins' holding, said to be about 80%. Sea Diamonds, in turn, holds some 44% of the share capital of Marine Diamonds, General Mining holding 25% of the balance, Anglo-Transvaal 16%, and another Oppenheimer company, Middelwitwatersrand Western Areas Limited, administered by Anglo-Transvaal, 7.5%. The remainder is held by the original concession holders. Middelwitwatersrand has a right of 10% participation in any prospecting ventures undertaken by Anglo-Val Rhodesian Exploration Limited, of whose equity 50% is held by Kennecott Copper. Everything seems to move round in circular motion within a ring that has no end. Mr. Sam Collins may have acted quickly and shrewdly in staking his claim to an offshore diamond reef, and he will, in all probability, make a killing. But the greatest winners will certainly prove, in the long run, to be Mr. Oppenheimer and his cohorts. The backstage goings-on to obtain control of what promises to be a most highly profitable venture prompted the Economist's Johannesburg correspondent to observe, quote, "The full story of the recent negotiations, if it ever emerged, might tell of a fierce struggle for control between South Africa's mining magnates in the best tradition of the rough, tough early days of Kimberley and the Rand." End quote. It is unlikely that De Beers will be able to make his way into the Japanese company now setting up plant in Japan for the manufacture of synthetic diamonds, which will initially turn out 300,000 carats a year to reach 600,000 annually. De Beers, in association with Société Minière de Besseka, have their own plant in South Africa for the manufacture of synthetic diamond grit operated by ultra-high pressure units. General Electric of America also has a process for turning out manufactured diamonds. The Japanese say theirs is not the same. And we have referred earlier on to Sibeka's interests in the possibility of producing artificial diamonds. There have been several attempts to create diamonds by a factory process, but they have, until now, proved somewhat uneconomic. With a strong likelihood that synthetic stones which can compete in price and performance with the natural product will soon be produced, another blow may be struck at the developing producer countries of Africa.